Hey guys, Ty, your Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's had a good weekend too. For the most part, it's been pretty quiet on the weather side of things until we looked at this here today, where we have a slight risk that even entails a hatch risk for damaging winds here. Area is shrinking because it was a little bit further into even South Dakota a little bit earlier. Fortunately, there haven't been any significant wind gusts from the looks of things right now. Of course, these reports sometimes take a longer time to come in than others, especially since we're a little bit more into the boonies here, or rural areas, if you will, in North and South Dakota here. So we'll have to see what happens with this. But as far as things are concerned right now, wind is the main threat. But interestingly enough, as we get into tomorrow, there's actually the return of the tornado threat here. 2% area right now. There could be a chance of this being upgraded. I find it rather slim right now, but we'll see what happens with it. But anywhere from pretty much even northern Iowa all the way into parts of northwestern and northern Wisconsin, even east central and eastern parts of Minnesota here. We do have a tornado threat there, albeit a 2% one, but we've seen quite a few 2% days overperform, so something to keep an eye on. This is partially in tow with our current storm system as well. So that being said, we'll have to keep an eye also for the wind and hail threat, as this low pressure area will be continuing to deepen and become a little bit more prevalent in the severe weather threat to come, as even on the following day, which would be Wednesday, there's a marginal risk right now. It would not surprise me if there is a small slight risk that pops up within this area. So definitely something to keep a lookout for. So pretty much anywhere from Memphis all the way up north, even towards central Michigan here, we'll be keeping an eye out. This also includes Milwaukee, Chicago, Fort Wayne, all the way down through Evansville and beyond. So no clear indicator as to what that threat would be, but I'm thinking probably going to be a wind threat most likely. Wouldn't rule out the chance of hail, maybe even a brief spin up. Hard to say right now as to whether that will end up being a thing. As far as the long range is concerned here, as far as days 4 through 8 is concerned, days 4, 6, 7, and 8 are predictability too low, so there's not a 0% chance of severe weather, but it's not high enough to where they would issue an advanced risk or an advanced risk of 15% or greater. As far as day 5 is concerned, it's potential too low, so far no worries there. Of course, with these being a little bit further out in range, these can also change as well. So plenty of stuff to keep an eye on here as far as the weather is concerned, especially since we know the tropics are plenty active this year and there's areas of interest. Tropical video will be coming soon, a little bit later this week. We could even be looking at the scenario of another major hurricane developing. Where that will go is still in question, but there are some interesting runs here. We're actually going to get into that right now as we look into the long range. So here's our current storm system right now. We're looking at the height anomaly map here. So look at our warm and cold air maps, where we see that little blank point can be a point of collision between the two, depending on how close they are together. But you can see this cold air mass beginning to take shape and really start to deepen over the eastern half of the Mississippi here and into the eastern half of the U.S. So this is where our pattern change that I've been kind of touching on briefly starts to really take shape here. We're going to be entering what looks to be more of a positive PNA setup, where it's a little bit warmer out to the west, cooler out to the east. And as time goes on, you can even see the storm track really become a little bit more active as time goes on here. These little blue bowling balls are areas of low pressure that are beginning to develop, and the tighter those contours are to each other, the stronger the low pressure. And actually this will also increase the potential for maybe even severe weather coming down the line. So as we get further along into the month, we're going to definitely have to be keeping an extra close eye on our potential here. This also will increase our shower and thunderstorm activity in general as well. So definitely need to be keeping a lookout over towards the heart of the country, towards the eastern half of the country, especially over towards the Ohio Valley too. And then here's an interesting scenario here that I'm going to kind of discuss a little bit further here. What you're seeing there as we continue to go forward here, that's actually what could very well be our next major hurricane. I don't know if keep in mind, we're over 200 hours out, so you can't put much merit into this run because of how far out we are, but this is an interesting scenario that takes shape here. But GFS has this going all the way into even Maine at this point, and potentially making landfall. Of course, it'll be weaker at this point as the waters will be cooler up in this region, But nonetheless, towards the northeast, you might want to be watching this a little bit closer, really anywhere along the eastern seaboard here in the U.S. Definitely need to keep an eye on it. Nova Scotia, you too. We need to be watching this as well. So that's an interesting outcome that we have going on here. Of course, this is one of many models, and not all models are on board with this. So with increased model discrepancies can mean a lack of confidence. So that being said, like I said, don't put too much merit into that run, but don't rule out the scenario. That's all I'm saying. Definitely are not trying to scare anyone on this channel, but be prepared in case that outcome does somehow come to be. Now, another thing to note here is with these warm and cold air masses that we've seen over the last little bit, if we look at the model data here on the temperature anomalies, and I finally found one that actually has the Fahrenheit symbol here. It was a little too late for the fall outlook, which you'll see in the morning. But what we can see here is for right now, we're still dealing with some well above average temperatures over here towards the northern parts of the Midwest and even the northern tiers of the U.S. here too. But as time goes on here, once we start to see this pattern start to flip here, we're not going to see as dominant of a warm temperature type deal over the U.S. as a whole. So it's pretty interesting to see how things will further develop as we push towards the middle of the month. Here's some notably cooler air beginning to take shape over here towards the heart of the country, and then eventually we even start to see that warm air building a little bit more out west, and then eventually we even see the eastern half of the U.S. start to get in on that cold air more. Temperatures could potentially even be 10 degrees below average, maybe even 15 in some spots. And as we continue to go on here, we start to see that cool air trying to build out west too. So big pattern flip can be on the way here, and with that also comes the increasing chance of more active weather too. It's also going to be indicated here by climate outlooks, which we'll be looking at momentarily. We also do need to take a look at temperatures because there's still some hazardous temperatures out ahead for the next week or so. You can still see plenty of 90s triple digits, especially east of the Rockies here, especially towards the heart of the country. That's where they're going to be the most predominant, especially over towards, let's say, Texas in particular, where we're seeing temperatures near 114, 108, 111. But as we get towards this weekend, we do start to see those hundreds start to dip off just a tiny bit, whereas before, if we go back in time, you can see those triple digits even working their way into Kansas here. But once we clear this weekend, though, start to notice that even towards the southeast, the temperatures are kind of dropping off. Whereas before we were in the 90s, now we're starting to get into the 80s here, which is a lot nicer, especially considering the fact that my day job involves me being outside pretty much the entire time. So it'll be a nice little break for a lot of people. And then as time goes on here, we do start to try and creep back up into the 90s, but definitely not looking anywhere near like what we once did here. Of course, we also have to take a look at the fact that we're still pretty far out on this run, so there's still room for changes, but there could be some positive signals here if you're tired of the heat, which I'm sure quite a few of us are. So definitely some good news to be had there. Looking ahead here in regards to the temperature outlook over the next 8 to 14 days, there are areas where we have to be on the lookout for excessive heat. Of course, Texas is the point of interest, and then towards the southwest as well. No real surprises there. It's been that for a while, and this isn't really going to be a changing trend here. Risk of heavy precipitation seems to be more predominant across the Midwest. This is in tow with that pattern change, of course. Another interesting area to look at, of course, is also Alaska. We don't get to look at this area quite as much. Do hope to change that, but weather here isn't super duper crazy so during the summer, so I'm not really gonna try to look at them as much. I probably will do that more down the line, especially as we get towards winter, with the potential of more snowstorms being predominant around the northwest and this area, of course, as well. But there is an area of slight potential for heavy precipitation here towards southeastern parts of Alaska, so definitely something that we'll be watching as well. As far as the 3 to 4 week outlooks, As far as temperatures are concerned, of course, over towards Texas, that's where the highest likelihood of above average temperatures exist. The highest probability of cooler than average temperatures, of course, is over towards Alaska, but equal chances out west. As time goes on, though, we will see this start to change over more, so we'll have to keep an eye on this, but I do expect a couple pockets here where we could see below average temperatures. And it's more prevalent on the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks here too. So based off of temperatures here, Ohio Valley is going to be a point where we see below average temperatures. And then as we start to go towards the middle part of the month here, we'll see an increase in above average temperatures out to the northwest and really the west in general. There's high probability, of course, towards Texas, where we're going to see those above average temperatures along with that excessive heat. And then, of course, Alaska, we don't really need to discuss them any further because we already know the deal there. As far as the weather pattern is concerned over in this region here, above average precip, of course, this pretty much lines up with what we were seeing on the models here. Increased chances of precip towards the heart of the country, towards the southeast as well, and then also towards the western half of the country. Looks like it's getting a little bit drier there, and then over towards the Great Lakes. Same pretty much is going to be said on the 8 to 14 day outlook, where we look at the temperatures starting to even expand that cold air into the northeast here, and then of course northwest is going to be a pretty similar deal. And then same can be said with the precipitation here. Towards the heart of the country is the greatest point of interest. Expands a little bit further off to the east here, and then of course our areas for below average precipitation remain the same, and then increasingly active across Alaska. So no real surprises there. Also take a look at the thunderstorm chances through our lightning flash density here. So throughout the course of this week here, of course, our chances of severe weather, which is going to be over towards the Dakotas and Wisconsin and my brain is working. Wisconsin and Minnesota here. We have our chances of storms here, and then as we go forward into Thursday, we will see that weather chance start to push more so into the Midwest and parts of the Southeast here. By the time we get into the weekend here, well east of the Mississippi, we're starting to see increased chances of shower and thunderstorm activity. And then as we get into next week, heart of the country is definitely going to be the point of interest here. Southeast comes into play here and there. But over the course of the next 10 days, I really think that this area here is going to be increasingly active. Not my best drawn circle, but particularly this area in here is going to be an area that I would watch for maybe even flash flooding potential here. Severe weather is still on the table. It's still questionable at the moment, but we'll have to see how that develops from there. But like I said, pattern is definitely changing. We're seeing maybe a couple of areas of interest in regards to severe weather, so definitely need to keep an eye on that. So we'll go ahead and throw this last map into a loop here. This is what the radar could potentially look like in the short term and what our pattern could look like in the long term from a precip standpoint. See multiple areas of low pressure developing on and off throughout the early part of the month and starting to kind of pick up in intensity as we go later into the month. This is getting towards the 15th, the 17th, and 18th. The storm systems look like they do end up becoming a little bit more stout as we get towards the end of the month here. So I do see some longer range models that do indicate the potential for severe weather. And so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And then, of course, our potential tropical system may be making landfall around Maine. It's questionable, but we'll have to see how things play out with that. But, of course, I'll be here to make our forecast and discuss all of this with you guys in the near future. But until then, that's all I got for you tonight. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Smash that like button, decimate that subscribe button, hit that share button. Stay tuned. This has been Tire Metal Weatherman. Until next time, have a good night. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. I'll see you soon.